initiative that was a year in the making, but it took place this morning in San Antonio. We took down 7 alleged members of the Bloods gang who were engaged in narcotics distribution on the east side of San Antonio with sources of supply up in Austin. So this was a cross-city operation. Before I get into the details, I just want to introduce everybody who's standing behind me. We have Eric Fuchs, who is the lead assistant United States attorney on this matter. You may remember his name from the Bandidos trial last year. He was also the lead prosecutor on that case. Dante Soria, Nello, who's the ASAC for DEA here in San Antonio. DEA was the lead agency in this operation. Chris Combs, the special agent in charge for the FBI. Shane Folden, the special agent in charge for Homeland Security investigations. Mario Pelayo, the deputy United States Marshal. David Robeson, the resident agent in charge for ATF. Phil Kaizen, the Bexar County first assistant ADA, or first ADA. Tony Hackbill, an ADA, also in Bexar County, who's been working on this case. Of course, Chief McManus of the San Antonio Police. Of course, Sheriff Salazar of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. Jose Morales, who's the administrator of the Texas Anti-Gang Task Force Center in this area. Phil Ayala, who's the regional director for Texas DPS. And finally, Arnold Zwicky, the Guadalupe County Sheriff. So thank you all for all our partners for being here. We're going to hear from a couple of them a little later. Today we unsealed, in conjunction with these arrests, a 10-count indictment. It charges these alleged members of the Bloods gang with selling cocaine, both powder and crack, as well as, and this is kind of interesting, meth that was disguised as ecstasy pills or MDMA pills. So I haven't seen that before. That was kind of an unusual feature of this takedown. And a lot of that distribution was centered around the Spring Hill apartments on the east side of San Antonio. In many cases, these defendants face a minimum of 5 years in prison if they're convicted, and a maximum of 40. Of course, they're presumed innocent until proven guilty, but if they are convicted, we're looking at 5 to 40 for a lot of them. Interestingly, almost all of these defendants had previous violent convictions on their record and had served time at either BOP or in Texas prison. So these were not new offenders. These were very serious offenders with violent crimes in their past, and that's why this operation, even though it's focused on the drug distribution offenses, is really an anti-violence, anti-gang operation. We're glad to make the streets safer. This morning, in the course of our arrests, we seized 9 firearms. That's another 9 firearms in the hands of criminals taken off the street. And this is a huge number, 20 kilograms of suspected meth pills. That's a lot of meth pills. So that's all off the street. Those are pills that someone could overdose on, that someone's life could be ruined on, that a kid could get hooked on, and now they're off the street. So that's very good news. I want to thank all of the agencies involved in this operation, which, as I mentioned before, was a year in the making. It's a lot. I can't name them all, but just to name a few. DA, of course, as I mentioned, was the lead agency, but FBI, Homeland Security Investigations, ATF, SAPD, of course, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, Bexar County District Attorney's Office, very big in this, Texas DPS, the Office of the Inspector General of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, also a number of other agencies. We mentioned Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office, Austin Police were involved. So this was a massive coordinated effort. Before I kind of turn it over to some other speakers, I just want to talk more broadly about the TAG program. TAG is Texas Anti-Gang Initiative, Texas Anti-Gang Centers. There are currently 6 in Texas. We're number 6 here in San Antonio. There's also TAG centers in Houston, Dallas, El Paso, Lubbock, and McAllen. 2 more, I believe, are scheduled to open in Tyler and Waco here in our district. These offices are largely, at least our office, is largely funded by the governor, so I want to give a huge thank you to the governor and the governor's office for supporting anti-gang efforts here in San Antonio and across the state. The purpose of the TAG Center, in part, is to bring together all the agencies you see here and more to coordinate efforts to really get at the command and control structure of gangs that are terrorizing our communities, and to make sure we have good information sharing across, for example, DEA and local police, so we can actually figure out how to target those gang leaders that are causing the most problems. Today's effort is an illustration of that. San Antonio's TAG program only went operational last year, January 2018. It had been in the works a little bit longer than that, but it went operational last year. And so you can already see the results of this kind of cooperation and this great funding and this great center we have. We're actually making a huge difference in the community. So far, just since that that center opened a year and a half ago, or less than a year and a half ago, we've made 375 arrests under the auspices of the TAG program and taken 376 weapons off the street. So if you're just doing the numbers, you got to figure there are lives saved both from firearm violence and from drug overdoses by just a year and a half of work with this TAG center. So it's a great program. The one thing we're debuting today is a new website for the San Antonio TAG program. That the URL is stopsanantoniogangs.org. I believe there's some information about it over here. There you see the URL right there, so hopefully you get a picture of that and put it in the paper. It has great information for parents and for educators on how to spot symbols of gang affiliation, tattoos, and so forth. It also has a tip line thing where you can anonymously report evidence about gang activity in your community to law enforcement without having to identify yourself. So it's really a two-way street. Educate the public, but also get information from the public to help disrupt these organizations. And then finally, before I turn it over, just going to briefly talk about these anti-gang and anti-violence initiatives. To me, this is the biggest social justice issue of our time. When you think about the advantages that someone like me had growing up, where you get safe community, SAT prep, and all that kind of stuff, and then you think about a kid that's going to school every day, and the streets are literally battlegrounds for gang violence. That kid is at a huge disadvantage versus other kids. And so before we get into anything else, we need to have safe streets for children to grow up in. If we don't have that, we're not going to close poverty gaps, we're not going to close achievement gaps. So, all of this is a criminal justice effort. Of course, it's a law and order effort. But to me, most of all, it's a social justice effort, because we're never going to close some of those persistent gaps in our society if certain kids are growing up in dangerous communities and others aren't. With that, I'm going to turn it over first to Phil Kaizen from the DA's office.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Philip Kaizen. I'm the first Assistant District Attorney in Bexar County, Texas. It is my honor and privilege to be representing our elected District Attorney, Joe Gonzalez, who could not be with us today. Folks, at the end of the day, every law enforcement initiative is a community initiative. It is by and for our neighbors here in Bexar County and really across the state, across the country. And so our presence here today and our achievements that we are touting today are nothing more than a recognition of the fact that when state, local, and federal, state, and local officials band together and share information and cooperate, it's a signal to the folks on the other side of the thin blue line. It is a signal to those folks that we are now organized and we are an army and we are coming for you. And to the extent that you threaten the safety and peace and freedom of our community, we are ready to respond. And we are ready to respond, my point being, we are ready to respond with a coordinated effort. We are talking to each other, we are cooperating with each other, and that spirit of talking and cooperation leads to startling results, which we are seeing today and will continue to see in the future. It's again stunning to me. For those of you that don't know, I'm a prosecutor from way back. Although I've been on the bench for the last 20 years before that, I was a frontline prosecutor in the district attorney's office in the mid-90s. Over in the juvenile section when San Antonio is being referred to as the drive-by capital of the country. It is programs like the Texas Anti-Gang Initiative that are a recognition of the fact that we are not going to return to those days. Let me repeat that. We are not going to return to those days. The Texas Anti-Gang Initiative, again, is a recognition that when we all work together and we all cooperate, we are much stronger than any foe that is going to be put against us. So again, you'll hear me use the words honor and privilege a lot today. It is indeed my honor and my privilege to be part of this crime-fighting task force. As I said, the folks from the federal government to folks at the state level and folks here at the local level. I don't want to fanboy by pointing out any of the particular individuals all in those agencies, but they're standing behind me. I will tell you that to be part of this kind of a force and this kind of initiative is something that I think the people of the state of Texas, certainly the people of San Antonio and Bexar County, the people of the state of Texas, and the people of the United States expect of their public servants. It's the kind of initiative the kind of cooperation and the kind of spirit of protecting them, the folks out in the community. It's that kind of spirit of cooperation that they expect from us and that we certainly intend to deliver to them. So again, my deepest thanks, both personally and professionally, to all of the members of the dais, if you will, that I share the stage with, but really to the men and women who are doing the hard work out in the community to get the drugs off the street, to get the violent gang members off the street, and to make our communities freer and safer. So again, it's been an honor and a privilege to address you this morning on behalf of my boss, the elected District Attorney, Joe Gonzalez, and thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Phil. Next, we're going to have ASAC Soria Nello from the DEA.
Thank you. My name is Dante Soria. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge for the Drug Enforcement Administration here in San Antonio, Texas. Today, we executed arrest warrants against individuals who are engaged in the organized trafficking of narcotics here in San Antonio, Texas, and in Austin, Texas. These individuals had direct ties to much of the violent crime that occurs in this region. This case would not have been possible without the synergistic work that has been done at the TAG, the Texas Anti-Gang Center, all of us working together. While we at DEA focus on narcotics trafficking, working with our partners at the federal, state, and local levels, we have had the ability to fill pieces of the puzzle and then put together a strong criminal case working with our prosecutors. Also, as part of this case, which is troubling from the DEA perspective, 20 kilograms of suspected methamphetamine was seized today at one of the search warrant locations. That was in pill form. Now, it was not just in a simple pill form. We had probably half of that was in white pill form. The rest of it looked like Easter candy. It was in multi-pastel colors. So what I'm putting out is this is something where you have a public safety issue where children were to see that, you would think it was Easter candy or some other form of candy. It's methamphetamine. And who knows what else when this is homegrown. Also at that location, we seized 22 different pill dyes in which individuals utilize to make counterfeit pills. So that falls into also the crisis we're facing here in the country with prescription pill abuse, the counterfeit pills that are out on the streets, and as well as the fentanyl abuse, because they're making fake hydrocodone, fake oxycodone with many of these pill presses, and that is causing many of the overdoses, which, as many of you know, has led to over 70,000 overdose deaths in the past year. So this is a real threat, but as been mentioned by many of the other speakers, organized here at the Texas Anti-Gang Center, working together, we're stronger and we're better than the organized crime element that's out there. And we're going to continue to work together and come after these individuals. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Chief McManus.
Thank you, Mr. Bash. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, I want to repeat a little bit of what Judge Kaizen said, that it's an honor and I'm in awe to be in the same room with the law enforcement and prosecutorial firepower that's standing behind me. Whenever local and federal agencies come together, there's usually always, and I emphasize always, a good outcome, as there was in this case. SAPD was happy to play a supporting role in bringing this case to a conclusion. We had our K-9, we had our SAFE officers, and we had our street crimes unit involved heavily in this case. And we have 10 officers and 2 sergeants as well assigned to the TAG unit. And I just want to say on behalf of the community, and I don't normally speak for the community, but I will say it in this case because the last time we had an investigation with DEA, where are you, Dante? Right here. With DEA and Dante, we took down a group of individuals on the east side. I won't name the street because it's kind of calm right now. But we took down a bunch of individuals on the east side who were heavily involved in drugs. And when that operation concluded, when the cars were pulling away, the neighbors came out and they thanked us profusely for the work that we did in cleaning up that neighborhood. And it's still clean today. So again, whenever there's an investigation that involves local and federal agencies, there's always a good outcome, as there was this time. So thanks for covering this, and For the neighborhoods that will benefit from this, you are always in good hands when law enforcement opens up an investigation in any matter troubling your neighborhood. So again, speaking for the community, I think that I can say thank you on their behalf for all the work that the agencies behind me did in bringing this case to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And finally, we're going to hear from Sheriff Salazar.
Of course, anytime law enforcement gets organized and works together, that should worry criminal organizations. But when we do it to the extent and as exceedingly well as this group has demonstrated, not just today, but in the operation leading up to this point, that should absolutely strike fear into the hearts of these drug trafficking organizations that we've disrupted and dismantled today. This work continues, absolutely, and the Sheriff's Office is proud to do our part in the tag and all of the other manner of operations that we're working in concert with our partners in law enforcement here. From the Bexar County Sheriff's Office perspective, we've got assets not only at the tag, but we've got a pretty substantial intelligence gathering network of deputies dedicated strictly to intel gathering within the jail itself. As you all know, when you get that many anytime between 3,000 and 4,000 inmates in one place, that's absolutely a goldmine of information. And the manner in which my deputies at the jail spend time gathering intelligence and feeding it out to the tag is what results in cases like what we're seeing today. So I very much appreciate the work of our partners, and I thank them all for their continued dedication. And I pledge to them my commitment to continue to support them in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. And before I open it for questions, just one more plug on StopSanAntonioGangs.org. If that's on your TV screen or your print article, you might save some lives just by printing that, because someone will know to go to it then. But with that said, if folks have questions for either me or anybody else who spoke, happy to take them.
People who were charged out of Austin, were they arrested in Austin this morning?
Yes.
I got a question for Mr. Sornello. What's the motivation with disguising methamphetamine as like Easter candy, as you said it?
I think it's purely marketing. Individuals are going to do things to make money when they're engaged in drug trafficking, and selling it that way, now this is educated speculation on our part. We think a lot of those pills are being sold to individuals using them at the clubs, and there's a perception with the public that if they're taking a pill, whether it be legitimate or not, it's somehow safer than maybe snorting a line or smoking methamphetamine. And of note, these gang members, they were not your traditional, we're just engaged in crack cocaine trafficking. They were selling powdered cocaine, methamphetamine, and hydroponic marijuana. So they were poly-drug distributors.
And where are they getting the resources from? Do we know that?
As far as?
Like how do they get it to the east side of San Antonio to distribute in our city?
Part of that's part of our ongoing investigation, so I don't really want to go into that part of it right now.
Well, one thing I'll follow up just on the pills point. You know, a lot of people that would not be willing to take drugs that you have to inject or snort might be willing to take pills because it gives the illusion that, well, I'd take pills for ordinary medicinal purposes, and so there's nothing strange about taking this. But these pills that are, even forget the facts of this case, pills that are now being manufactured in Mexico that are, oxycodone ripoff type pills, those are very different than the oxycodone you purchase from a real manufacturer, which is dangerous in and of itself if abused, because they have completely variable intensity that's hard to predict even within the same set of pills. They're not manufactured by professionals. They may have things in them like fentanyl that you don't expect them to have in them. So these pills going around the streets are in some ways more dangerous because they lull people into a false sense that what they're taking is relatively safe compared to other hard drugs when it really isn't.
So are we seeing a change in the way, in the kind of drugs people are using nowadays, away from the traditional, like marijuana or cocaine?
Well, it is certainly true that in this area of the country, methamphetamine is a huge, huge problem. That's, I think my colleagues would agree with me. They're all problems, but if we had to pick one that's very significant in this area of the country, it's methamphetamine. I imagine that wasn't true 30 years ago in the same way. Throughout the country, of course, opioids and heroin are huge problems. The Justice Department just had a major takedown involving like 10 U.S. attorneys' offices yesterday in Appalachia of 60 doctors that were illegally prescribing opioids. So countrywide, opioids is definitely the drug leading to the most overdoses as far as I know. But in this area of the country, methamphetamine is a particularly large problem.
Now the fact that we're here and we have 10 names over there, is the
Well, I have no doubt that these individuals are not the only people in San Antonio producing and selling narcotics. Generally, when we have this sort of level of resources dedicated to individuals, we're talking about people that pose special problems, whether it's because of their violent histories. As I mentioned, all of these folks have violent histories, or the sheer quantity of drugs that they're selling. So yeah, when you have federal agencies involved and when you have federal, state, local cooperation, we're usually going after bigger deals. In this case, it's a big deal, but it's certainly not the only big deal out there, and we have a lot more work to do, no doubt.
I got a question for Chief McManus. I know in recent history your department has been focused on the east side, and the release said this was focused on the east side. How does this bust go along with your department's focus on trying to tap down some of the gang violence on the city's east side?
I don't know if you recall, Michael, last year the operation I referred to that we worked with DEA, we took down, I believe, or actually it was FBI. There were actually two. One was DEA right before the one we did with FBI, and we took down 10 individuals. And these individuals were responsible generationally for the back and forth retaliatory violence that has been occurring on the east side for as long as everyone can remember. When these 10 individuals went down, it stopped. And I was at a community meeting 2 Saturdays ago with the East Side Neighborhood Alliance group of all head of 15 or 20 neighborhood associations, and I commented to them on that operation and those arrests, and said that since that operation was completed, the back and forth, constant retaliatory violence that has been occurring on the east side for years seems to have stopped. And I got a nod of approval from everyone in that room. So this operation and any operation that involves anyone in any part of the city is going to stop the violence, is going to be part and parcel of the solution to stopping the violence that's occurring there.
Let's just remember on the east side, you know, a lot of times we hear east side and we just think gang violence and other forms of violence. There's areas like that in every American city, but the vast majority of people that live there are law-abiding citizens who are the ones that are the victims of this violence. They can't live normal lives, as safely as they would want to because they're beset by violence. So I think we should think of the east side as an area filled with people who need law enforcement's help to make sure they can live with the same safety and security as everybody else.
Sheriff, puede tener ese mismo problema tal vez en el condado, tomando en cuenta que a lo mejor está un poco menos vigilado. A lo mejor, ¿qué puedes decir de eso?
Mira, aunque hay en líneas dentro el condado, en medio de la ciudad de San Antonio y el condado de Béjar, los criminales que andan cometiendo estos delitos, ellos no saben dónde están estas líneas. Entonces, los mismos criminales que andan persiguiendo el Departamento de Policía de San Antonio, tanto como mi departamento, son los mismos criminales. Entonces, por eso nos unimos en el Violent Crimes Task Force, que se dedica a eso. Ahorita tenemos una operación con nosotros, el Departamento de Policía de San Antonio, las policías estatales y varias agencias federales que estamos trabajando juntos en FM 78, por Converse, Kirby, por esa área. Por eso, simplemente por los delitos violentos, y seguimos la lucha, todos juntos.
Any more?
And are you able to talk a little more about what happened here? Like, how were they getting the drugs from Austin to San Antonio and then distributing them?
I think we'll pass on that for now, although I appreciate the question, just because I don't want to disrupt what is an ongoing investigation. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much for coming out today and for making the public aware of this very important operation.